On the line is the CEO of Ryanair, Michael O'Leary. Michael, you're very welcome to the hard shoulder. So we have this complaint now from American Airlines over this failure to raise the cap. How serious is this situation?
Good evening, Ciara. I think it's very serious. Ireland international standing is a joke. We have a cap at Dublin Airport at 32 million, despite the fact that we have runway capacity for 60 million passengers. And the embarrassment is we elected a government now 13 months ago with a government programme published in January of 2025, which promised that they would scrap this cap, quote, as soon as possible. 13 months later, nothing done. But it's typical of this government led by Micheál, wandering around the world, Martin, too busy travelling abroad getting his photograph taken and doing nothing here at home. It's not good enough for this government to say, well, we'll move the legislation or we'll move the heads of bills, we'll move this. This is now 14 months after they promised to scrap the cap as soon as possible. The Minister for Transport could issue a direction straight away eliminating the cap. But, I go back to when NAMA, the legislation was moved within 24 hours. When ICS were going bankrupt, the legislation was moved within 24 hours. What's going to happen here is I think the White House or the Department of Transport in the US is going to block Aer Lingus flights landing in New York. And then you'll finally see Micheál Martin move this legislation within 24 hours.
Well, in terms of that ministerial order, I think the AG's advice says that that's actually not possible.
Complete rubbish. The AG's, they haven't published the AG's advice and it's wrong. Noel Dempsey, when he was Minister for Transport, issued a direction to the DAA to actually push on and build a second terminal. So, the advice can't change, but it's neither here nor there. We've elected a government with a 20-seat majority. They do nothing. They're led by a Taoiseach who spends more time abroad getting his photograph taken. Last week he was in China. Next week he's off to Davos. In December he was in Angola, allegedly on a jobs mission. How many Angolan jobs have been generated in Ireland? None. Meanwhile, here at home, nothing is happening. This government doesn't do anything. It just talks about, it launches plans, it promises action sometime by the end of this year. If we don't get this cap lifted or this cap abolished legislatively before the end of June, Micheál Martin will take over the presidency of the European Union and nothing will be done by this government in the second half of the year.
I just want to ask you about the consequences here.
Getting his photograph taken.
The consequences of this. Do you think there is a likelihood that
are clear.
The US... Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, do you think the consequences are that the US will cut transatlantic flights or make those transatlantic flights more difficult for those operators?
No, I think it's much more serious. I think two things. One, the US administration is going to block Aer Lingus landing in New York, and then we'll pass the legislation in 24 hours. The other key date is going to be St. Patrick's Day in the White House, where Micheál Martin will show up with his bowl of shamrock, and he had better have had this cap, the cap removed by that date, or he'll be in real trouble with Trump. In fact, he might even be let into the White House, which would be probably quite good for Ireland. We need a Taoiseach to deliver on his promises. And what I keep going back to the point, last January he promised to remove the cap as soon as possible. What did he actually mean by as soon as possible? 14 months, 18 months, 24 months.
Okay.
Now he can go on he'll be off to Davos next week talking about delivery and action. This is a do-nothing Taoiseach leading a do-nothing government. And the most important thing, I think, the way to get this cap scrapped now would actually be for the White House to block Aer Lingus flights landing in the US, and then Micheál Martin will move within 24 hours.
OK, can I just ask you about Starlink, which is Musk's satellite-delivered global internet connectivity system, and you've confirmed, look, it's not coming on to Ryanair. You've concerns about the drag of the antenna and the cost related to that. Elon Musk has written on X that you, Michael O'Leary, are misinformed in this, that he doubts you can even measure the difference in fuel use accurately, especially for short 1 hour flights, he says, where the incremental drag is basically zero. What do you say to that? What Elon Musk knows about flights and drag would be zero. We've already had Boeing confirm we have to put an aerial antenna on top of the aircraft. Now, that will cost us, it's about a 2% fuel drag. Our fuel bill a year is $5 billion. It would cost us about $250 million a year. In other words, about an extra dollar for every passenger we fly. And the reality for us is we can't afford those costs. Passengers won't pay for internet usage. If it's free, they'll use it.
but they won't pay €1 each to use the internet. So we're not putting it on board. And I frankly wouldn't pay any attention to anything that Elon Musk puts on that cesspit of his called X. He was the guy who advocated getting Donald Trump elected. I would pay no attention whatsoever to Elon Musk. He's an idiot. Very wealthy, but he's still an idiot.
Do you have an X account, Michael?
No.
Right.
I would not waste. I don't have any social media accounts. Thankfully, I'm too old to get involved in the cesspit that is social media. By the way, if we want to clean up social media or grok or any, there's one simple thing this government could do. Take away the anonymity. Everybody on social media should be on social media using their own names.
And then we know who
that allows
who these individuals are.
The paedophiles and all the other kind of deviants to operate there.
All right.
It is a mystery to me why any elected government allows anonymity on social media. If you want to go on social media, by all means, but publish the crap or the rubbish that you publish there under your own name. And when, for example, Simon Harris's family or all politicians receive untold abuse on social media, force those people to issue those, to publish that abuse under their own names, and you clean up the cesspit that is X and all the rest of those social media sites. But in the meantime, can Micheál Martin please do something as soon as possible and scrap the Dublin Airport cap before he gets embarrassed by Donald Trump in the White House on Paddy's Day?
All right, Michael O'Leary, CEO of Ryanair, thanks as always.